Hi, this is Les Posen, FlightWise Fear of Flying clinical psychologist. Welcome to January 2018. Hope you've had a restful break. Here in Australia it's summer. Today in Melbourne, where I am, it's about 40 degrees centigrade. So I hope you're trying to keep cool if you're local or keep warm if you're in the northern hemisphere. I've just come back from a very restful cruise on board ship where I gave some lectures about two things that I love to talk about, and that's technology and how I apply to what we know about the brain, in particular of service to people who suffer with anxiety. Today I want to talk to you about anxiety with regard to one of the presenting features which comes to fear of flying, and that's anxiety with turbulence. So here we have a little model plane. So in this particular little video, just a couple of minutes long, I want to share with you some ideas that I share with my patients about turbulence. One of the things that people feel about turbulence is that you're sitting still in a plane, unaware that it's doing 500 knots, 600 miles an hour, 750 kilometers an hour forward. You don't feel any movement when it's smooth, but then when you do feel a movement, it tends to be this, or a sway. Okay, so this is called heave, and this is called sway, and this is called pitch. Okay, so these are some of the sensations people feel, and the trouble is when you're moving forward at 600 miles an hour, and there's a downward vector, we feel it like a fall, and hence we think that there's an air pocket, that is, the air is no longer there and the plane can no longer sustain lift and it falls. Of course, this is nonsense. Planes do not come forward 600 miles an hour, oops, no air, drop, oh, more air, goes back 600 miles an hour. Doesn't work this way. As we come along and there's a downward vector, we may experience a sensation due to our inner ear experiencing a change of acceleration as we move down and move up. For every down, there will be an up, so you have to expect two things. One of them will cause you to feel heavy in the seat, and the other one will cause you to feel a little bit lighter in the seat. Whatever happens, you'll feel a bit of a queasy sensation in the stomach. The more sensitive you are, the more you'll feel queasy. So in the case that it takes to fall 200 feet, or maybe 200 feet, it's actually not really falling, because in the time that we've gone in a vertical direction 200 feet and then back up 200 feet, we've probably gone forward half a mile. I'm going to use international aviation terms, which is miles rather than kilometers or whatever else. So in fact, if we could slow this down, it would be more like blip and going forward. It's not come to a stop, fall, go back up and continue. It doesn't work that way. And I've sat in the flight, in the offices of pilots, that is the flight deck. We're coming to cloud, and I've said to patients, this is pre-2001, when we could get into flight decks, I said, have a look at the altimeter. We're about to come to cloud. It's going to get a little bit bumpy. And we look at the altimeter, hardly moves. If you put water onto your table or your tray table in a seat during turbulence, you'll see the water sort of splashes a little bit, but doesn't leave, doesn't suddenly go up in the air. Okay? So that's the general sense of what happens in turbulence. We go along and go blip, and then we continue along. Now, I have a second explanation for you. By the way, if you look over my shoulder, you might see some of the aeroplane seats that I use, and some photos. When people sit in the seats, they'll actually see kind of a life-size image of what it looks like to sit in those seats, just to start my exposure work. So for my second demonstration, we have the same sort of plane, but this time I've embedded it in jelly. Not just any old jelly, but raspberry jelly. As a kid, I loved raspberry jelly. You may have liked it as well. And so what I did is I simply took a plane like this, simply a model you can buy online, not light, but this is 747-300, hardly see any of these anymore in the air. And I took its a similar model, same collection. This is a 400 series, and I made a layer of jelly, let it set, put my model on top, then got a second layer of jelly liquid and put it on top and let it set. So now, as you can see, we have an aircraft embedded in jelly. And this is a little model, and what I ask patients to do, get into the smell of it, because we tend to store odours with an emotional quality to it, such as when we're in childhood, in areas of the brain quite similar, quite close to where our threat and fear centres would appear to be, in the limbic system. What we're trying to do is calibrate that limbic system and tell it this is not a threat. So if we tap on the side, as I'm about to do, the plane might wobble in the jelly. Do it front on now. The plane might wobble in the jelly from the back, and more importantly from underneath. But the jelly doesn't suddenly open up and the plane falls through. When you're doing 600 miles an hour, even in very thin air, which is where your jet engines operate the most efficiently in terms of fuel, less resistance of course, we're doing at 39,000 feet, and it's colder where the engines operate more efficiently. Nonetheless, doing 600 miles an hour, the air takes on the property of liquid, and it's almost liquid that becomes a little bit viscous, thick. Concorde, when it was flying commercially, actually lengthened by about 8 inches or so, even though it's minus 60 at 60,000 feet or 50,000 feet, because of the friction of the air going along the side of the metal, and would actually extend by about 8 inches in mid-flight. So the air is doing something up there. It's there. It's not just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Well, the plane flies through turbulence as if it's viscous like jelly. Okay, so I sometimes use this to illustrate, so people can have in their mind this is what's going on. And I usually suggest to people, take some raspberry or some strawberry juice or something to suck on, so that smell that reminds you turbulence might be uncomfortable moving around, but it's not unsafe, and this has to become your new mantra. So now we have 2 ways to think about turbulence, to try and recalibrate, try and change it from turbulence is terrible and I can't stand it, into planes can handle turbulence, it's just like flying through jelly. And secondly, planes do not drop and go back up and continue. It's basically bloop along, because by the time it's moved up and down 200 feet, it's actually gone forward maybe half a mile. So I hope this helps you try to recalibrate how your brain is assembling the knowledge about turbulence. And again, once more, the mantra you want to practice. Turbulence might be uncomfortable, it's not unsafe. So I hope you enjoyed this little video, and there'll be more to come with other little tales of how to overcome some of your fears of flying, which you can easily apply.